then you'll be able to turn this around. Otherwise, if you're sitting there, there's something will come your way, from heavenly intervention, it won't happen. It is yourself, your inner woman, which will make other people see what your potential is in your chosen field, whether it is STEM or STEAM or any other intellectual endeavor. That is you who matters. You need to empower yourself first, then you can look anywhere else to make the right decision for yourself.
Thank you. Adil, the title of this panel is Who Needs a University Anymore? As we know, historically, universities were places for a small elite, and only in recent years have they been democratized. I'd like to ask you, given the rising costs, new technologies, and changing labor markets, do you think we may be moving back towards a world where full university education is once again primarily for those with time and resources? And if that's the case, what does it mean for social mobility, equality of opportunity, and the broader national role that universities are meant to play, particularly in countries like Pakistan?
Great. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be attending the Think Fest for the first time and to be part of this lovely panel. It's a long question, and the answer could sort of involve lots of different dimensions. But let me begin by saying that the university typically, the way we think about university, is not just a place where you go and get a degree, you're taught by good teachers. It is much more than that. And particularly elite universities that you talked about are places where networks are produced. I mean, if you ask me, after having taught at Oxford for 20 years, what's the best asset that Oxford would give, is not just what's taught in the classroom, it's really the peer group, the type of students you interact, the type of networks you form. That is a huge social capital, right? So if you've studied at Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, you go around the world, you'll find lots of people with similar degrees from the same places. And so it's a place where networks are produced. It's a place where there's a lot of agenda setting that is taking place. I mean, sometimes I feel in Oxford I'm more of a diplomat rather than an academic, because there's always a regular stream of visitors, thought leaders, people from the public life who are speaking, engaging with students, and the university people themselves play an important role in agenda setting. I think universities are also part of this growing system of gatekeeping. If you are authoring a paper from Oxford, Harvard, or MIT, and you're submitting it to a journal, you're much less likely to be desk rejected compared to, let's say, you're a scholar based in a developing country, or even in University of Leicester or Southampton, which are all very good universities. But there's huge entry barrier in that. So I think from that perspective, the universities would still be needed, because you are entering into a large, well-known university that is going to provide you a ticket for that. It's a club. So I think that is the sort of more practical side of looking at these elite universities. But there's another reason why you need a university, particularly these sort of universities, in the world of AI. Over the last year, I have seen the way Oxford has changed hugely in response to AI. I'm finding that these universities will be very good at adapting to new technologies. Within a year, every department has come up with its own policy on AI. You have a new pro-vice chancellor on digital education. So again, this is going to increase the gap. The good universities will be very good at adapting. They're going to be very resilient, which will further grow the divide. But we have to recognize that universities are part of society, right? And so many of the larger questions of society also apply to the university. People talked about free thinking. The classic question that we presented when it comes to university is that, is it a formative force or is it a dependent formation? Which is to say, a formative force would be someone where you produce enlightened individuals, people who can think critically, who can ask questions, who can engage respectfully with others, be part of that larger intellectual space. It's an important part of active citizenship. You cannot think of active citizenship without universities. You cannot think about a space to create the future without the university, because there is no vision for the future without hope. And there is no hope without a space in a society where people are able to think, reflect, and be in a state of transcendence, because it's almost like, you know, we are all body and soul, right? And so we care for where we are, but we care for things that are transcendental, whether it comes to morality or religion or ethics. Universities are those spaces where you create hope. So you cannot create a vision for a society without a university that is really anchored in that. For many developing countries, we worry about sovereignty, and we will worry more about sovereignty in the face of what is happening in the world. There's no idea of sovereignty without a good university space. Some of the best universities in this region, whether it's Jamia Millia Islamia, Aligarh Muslim University, Government College, they were part of larger political movements. Muhammad Ali Jawhar, when he set up the university, it was a larger idealistic project that led to the creation of that university. So you need to create that space for self-directed education. That's why all societies, even before universities were born, much like Oxford was more like a, you know, lots of these different religious madrasas of sorts, right? They were more educational institutions geared towards religion. Societies have always in history created spaces, whether it's monasteries or madrasas, where you pay people to think and say, you are not going to do the daily work, you're just going to think and engage and think about the larger questions of life. That will become even more important in the world of AI, because the AI wants to create us all as automated individuals, right? So the value on authenticity would actually increase as a result of that. So I think education gives us the pedagogy of hope. It gives us the pedagogy of the oppressed, right? Pedagogy of nationalism. So a university space has to be there, and it's connected with the larger question of what a society wants to become.
Thank you for that. I really like that. That universities are places for hope. And I mean, we can say that the creation of Pakistan, the idea of Pakistan can be credited to a university as well, and then it actually happened. So thank you for that. Dr. Badavi, coming back to you, how do you think universities can adapt in practical ways in what they teach, how they teach, and how they govern themselves, while still protecting their independence and intellectual purpose in an increasingly politicized environment?
So, I don't know about the politicized environment, but I think that, you know, you asked me at the beginning what the challenges were, and I set those out, but the name of this panel is, do we need the universities? And just to pick up on what Adil said, absolutely we do need universities in this polarized world, politicized world, the world of AI and technology, because if you speak to any Nobel Prize winning scientist or economist, they will tell you that their work, their breakthroughs benefited from collaboration, from talking, debate with other, you know, intellectuals in their field and so on. And that is why universities do provide the space for that collaboration, for debate. You know, you're not just sitting there on your computer. And also the cross-disciplinary approach that you can derive from a university education, where you may be studying mathematics, but you'll be interacting with students who are studying the social sciences and history. The idea that we can be, you know, an aeroplane flying on just one wing of STEM and AI and technology is not correct. You need the arts and humanities, the social sciences. How can you understand the world of AI if you don't understand ethics? So I think there's a real place for universities to nurture these kind of subjects and to say, look, you know, stimulation, and as Adil said, it's about creating friendships and partnerships and networks in the future. Although as somebody who was an undergraduate at Oxford University many, many years ago, I do wonder now about the value of education from some of these elite institutions in Europe, because when I left Oxford, we all got jobs, you know, just very quickly, but now I hear about students from Oxford who've got degrees in history or philosophy who are struggling to find jobs, actually, and somebody from a lesser university with a degree in engineering or in computer science is more likely to get a job because these are the kind of jobs that the economy is demanding. So I am a little bit concerned about that direction of travel. But university education is very, very expensive, and you or somebody mentioned about, you know, whether it is just something that is going to be only afforded by a few people, and I think that's a real problem, because if you look at what's going on in the UK, where we have relied on in UK universities very much on the foreign students to boost our budgets, this is something which is now in retreat. The UK government has completely now, in the last few days, shifted its higher education strategy. In 2019, it set a target of 600,000 foreign students to come to the UK to study. But now in the UK, it's become part of the kind of debate on immigration. So the government is saying quite clearly, no, we don't want students to come in such great numbers to study in our British universities. We want British universities to set up branches in Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and so that the students can benefit from a British education system, but out there. We do that already at SOAS. We've forged partnerships, you know, and set up linkages with universities in the global south. And actually, I don't think that's a particularly bad thing, because, you know, the challenges that we meet globally, we need voices from the south. We need that cross-fertilization of ideas. We need to know, you know, what the academics and intellectuals are thinking in the south. And so I think if there are greater linkages between universities in the global north and in the global south, that can only be really a good thing, because I think that, you know, that's something that we all try to promote at SOAS. We're a university of the world. We want to include intellectuals, you know, across all disciplines and from other parts of the world, because I think there has been, certainly when I was an undergraduate at Oxford, I did my postgraduate studies at London University, there was very much an idea that, you know, all the thinking came from Western thought, really. I mean, we've tried to change that at SOAS now, where we try to indigenize our curriculum. So if you study about Pakistan, you'll hear about Pakistani historians' perspectives and intellectuals and so on, the same with Africa and so on. And I think that that is very, very important. So maybe what the UK is doing by encouraging linkages between our universities in the UK and in the global south will really, you know, develop that kind of thinking in universities. So I think that there are real challenges, but there are real, you know, there's real potential for change. But certainly we do need the universities for all the reasons that, you know, my fellow panelists have articulated.
Thank you. We do have time for audience questions. If anybody has a question, we can take about 3 or 4. I see somebody right in the middle next to the lady in yellow. Could you stand up, please? Yes. Give her a mic. Sorry, the lights are very bright. One first. Go ahead, shout it out. Sorry, a little bit louder. We talk a lot about free thinking and
at the same time, thank you so much. So I want to know that we know that the student unions have been banned in Pakistan since 1984, and Sindh uplifted that ban in 2022. I want to ask Mr. Zaidi, what does that implementation look like in Sindh, And I want to ask people who lead universities in Punjab, like Khatija and Dr. Uzma, do you think that universities can reopen that space for student unions so we can actually open student voice in our spaces?
So actually at the IBA we've been having student elections for many years, even when there was a ban on student elections. So there's a student council, they elect themselves, and if they have any party affiliations, they're very free to voice their concerns. But usually, because the IBA is slightly different from Punjab University, for example, they're more concerned about their own issues. So they've been electing them, they sit on various bodies, they advise, they take part in, they advise the deans at the IBA as well. So they're very participatory, and they sit in something called the disciplinary committee as well. So they can listen to cases which concern other students. So it's very, very open in that way. And they're entitled to their voice.
Thank you. And if somebody can comment about Punjab, like, do you think that change can come here soon?
I think we have to move on to the next question. This gentleman here. So free speech is about knowledge, and knowledge is about free speech. And 18-year-olds, when they come into the university, vote in this country, and maybe 16-year-olds in other countries. Of course, they're entitled to their views. Of course, they should support whoever they want, wherever they are. And there is always a discussion about ideas, knowledge, and if we ignore what Mr. Trump is doing, our students are not going to learn anything. So I think that's the whole idea of free speech is part of that. I don't know what cutting costs of cancer research has to do with upping standards, but I think we can move on to the next question. Anybody here? There's a gentleman here.
I have a question.
Oh, you have a question.
So, will the host like to tell me the name of the gentleman sitting here?
I can't hear you. Adil Saab?
Yeah, sorry. Adil Saab, I have a question from you. You mentioned the three universities name a lot repeatedly when you were speaking: MIT, Harvard, Oxford, MIT, Harvard, Oxford. So my question is that these top tier universities are extremely competitive. A student is competing with the whole world, and if the student is competent, he may not be in the eyes of the admission board. And due to the extremely high numbers of applications, there is a significant probability that a lot of student applications will be overlooked and not assessed on a deeper level. So if the students don't get accepted in these Ivy Leagues, air quotes, they might have options, but they have fear of missing out because they didn't have exact Ivy League university, and they have this FOMO while studying at a subpar university that they think is subpar university. So, and I would like to add on that I think these Ivy Leagues take advantage of the brand image they have developed over the years, and they charge a lot for the education they are offering, and students are indebted for at least 5 years with the student loans they have taken out, and they are hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, and do you think we need to scale universities that are good enough, and a lot of good enough universities should be built so that the students don't feel that they are missing out, and the universities that bad repos should work on their repos. It be providing but a student is avoiding that particular university of their bad repo. So what do you have to say on that?
Please excuse me if I haven't fully understood your question, but what I understand from what you're saying is that obviously there are huge entry barriers. So I'm running this Oxford Pakistan program, and we try and bring in Pakistanis from different backgrounds, university, etc., and regions to Oxford. And every time we discover another barrier, right? So there's a barrier also of the admission fee for many students. Just to pay 30,000 rupees just for the application fee is a huge barrier. Look, success is always ration in the world. And secondly, whenever there's success, it tends to perpetuate itself. There have been studies about different income backgrounds, students coming from those high income backgrounds, more likely to get into these top places, Harvard, Oxford, and their children again get into Oxford and Harvard. So if you go back to Piketty's presentation, it's university, elite universities are an important mechanism for perpetuating inequality, intergenerational transmission of inequality. Now, what does an elite university do in that context is to be very actively addressing those barriers. So at Oxford, for example, one of the most active areas of discussion, how do you improve access? So this year, for example, the university has started active academic futures program. And it's saying there are two communities in the UK who are extremely underrepresented at Oxford, despite their substantial proportion in the population, the British Pakistanis. And they've started a new scholarship scheme, putting in close to £1 billion in that. So if you are a British Pakistani, you have much more likelihood. Very active program. Then we have a program, the Director of Undergraduate Studies, who's actually from Lahore, Dr. Samina Khan. She travels widely to all these places in the north where you have, schools where people don't apply. With the Oxford Pakistan program, what I'm discovering is that talent is one thing. All people from different parts of Pakistan, for example, would be very talented. But there's a bigger barrier, which is an internal barrier, which is the aspirational barrier. And it's really sad to see so many talented students who just feel that they are not good enough to come. They're not aspiring. They're not hoping. And I think this issue is so deep in Pakistan. People are just totally bereft of hope. It was amazing. Last year, we gave 4 scholarships as part of our program. All 4 of them, at the end, I asked them, did you tell your parents you're applying and you're getting, probably you get into the interview. They said, no, we didn't want to raise expectations. And in the end, all 4 of them said, we never hoped that we will get a scholarship. So I think there is a barrier that the elite university faces, but it interacts with larger socioeconomic inequalities, which is addressing people's ability to be persistent. Because, I applied for the Rhodes Scholarship for 3 times. It was the 3rd time that I was successful. I had to persist. In all of these good universities, even as an academic, if I want to publish in a top journal, I get a lot of rejections and I have to repeatedly submit those papers. For that, you need a new dynamic in society which has hope as a key part of that dynamic. And the universities, successful universities, will always be places which ration opportunity. Therefore, they have to be extra vigilant and careful to be engaging with those access programs, which a university like Oxford is doing a great job. It needs to do more. So I think that's the dynamic we are really talking about. But it's certainly in the larger discussion of inequality, elite universities are absolutely a part of that debate.
Thank you, Adil. Thank you, Adil. I completely agree with that. Talent is everywhere, opportunity is not, and we are excited to hear what the Oxford Pakistan program continues doing. We've also mentioned how universities are microcosms of the society that they exist in, And I think that's a really important point, especially as we move forward. We're all practitioners in this space. Nobody has said that there is no place in the world for university education anymore. I feel like we've come somewhere conclusive with this argument, and I see some people raising hands, but unfortunately we are running out of time, and I'd like to offer the panelists for any concluding remarks before we finish up. Yes, please.
I think there's one aspect of universities that is particularly pertinent to Pakistan that I'd like to put on the table, and that is it's also a social and cultural cauldron. It's the place when anybody and all from all walks of life comes in, and then they get an opportunity. They get an opportunity to shine, to succeed, and it's also a safe space where you are allowed to experiment with thoughts are expressed, where debates are held, and in that way they perform a very, very critical role, especially in a country like Pakistan. So in IBA, you will be not only getting people from just the elite, you will be getting from all social strata, from different parts of Sindh, and they will have that opportunity to interact with the world. So it plays an absolutely crucial role as far as social mobility and expression of talent is concerned.
Thank you, Dr. Badavi.
Yes, just very quickly. I mean, I get the impression from what I've heard about in Pakistan that a lot of students favour the STEM subjects. And I think that if I were devising a university, I would say that we must not forget what makes us human, and human intelligence and creativity, art for the sake of art. These are the things that make us uniquely human. And I would say that those people going into STEM, think about a world without music. Think about a world, where you listen to music that's been generated by AI. Or novels, great novels written by AI. This is not a world that we would wish to live in. So I would say that I'd love to see a university where maybe in the first year, even if you're doing STEM or whatever, that you have access to a wider array of disciplines, arts and humanities, social sciences, so that you can nurture that critical thinking and that you don't just sort of sit there number crunching. Because I think in the world of AI and technology, we must not forget human intelligence, creativity, and the arts. And understanding people's spaces, systems requires us to have, a whole array of these topics. So I would give a shout out to, the humanities and the arts, history and so on. Without history, you explain the past through history, yes, but you also inform the present and help shape the future. So I would say that for all those countries where the students are just thinking about STEM, let us remember what makes us uniquely human.
Thank you so much, Dr. Badavi. And I'm going to finish in Urdu, so please do excuse me for transitioning into Urdu now. I'm going to sum up. There's an anecdote from Aga Khan University at the very beginning when all of these doctors-to-be enter the classroom. They have about 2 weeks of humanities. तो जब वो जाते हैं अपने क्लासरूम के अंदर, उनको उनके प्रोफेसर ये कहते हैं कि डॉक्टर बनने के लिए तो आपके पास 4 साल हैं, मेरे पास बस 2 हफ्ते हैं आपको बंदा बनाने के लिए. तो I think that sums up the purpose of universities, and we are going to end with that. Thank you so much to everybody who came on this Saturday afternoon. Please continue coming to events like this. They are far and few between in Lahore, so thank you so much for showing up for this. Thank you.
Yes.